50 years ago, dairy farmers paid someone to haul this stuff away. They dumped it in rivers, sprayed it on fields, fed it to pigs. It was pollution, a byproduct so useless it was regulated as an environmental hazard. Today, that same liquid sells for up to $14 a pound. Market researchers estimate the global industry built around it is worth anywhere from $5 to over $20 billion and growing fast. And it's sitting in your gym bag right now. This is the story of Whey, and how a waste disposal problem became one of the most profitable ingredients in the entire fitness industry. To understand this story, you first need to understand cheese. When milk curdles into cheese, it leaves behind a liquid, whey, and whey makes up somewhere between 85 and 90% of the milk's original volume. For most of the 20th century, that liquid was a genuine environmental problem. FAO documentation notes that a single cheese plant processing 100,000 liters of milk a day can produce pollution equivalent to a city of 60,000 people. U.S. patent filings from the era describe whey disposal as, quote, a major problem for the dairy industry. Globally, it's still happening at a significant scale. Academic estimates put annual global whey production somewhere between 160 and 200 million tons. And by some research estimates, close to 47% of that is simply discharged into rivers and soil. This wasn't a hidden byproduct quietly making someone rich. It was trash. Expensive, environmentally hazardous trash. The turning point wasn't a marketing idea. It was a filtration breakthrough. Through the 1960s and 70s, food scientists figured out how to use ion exchange and microfiltration to actually separate whey's protein from the rest of the liquid, the lactose, the fat, the water. That gave the industry two new products, whey protein concentrate, and later, an even more refined version called whey isolate. Then, in the 1980s and 90s, bodybuilding went mainstream. Gym culture exploded. And suddenly there was a hungry market for exactly the thing dairy companies had spent decades trying to get rid of. Here's where the numbers get almost absurd. Market research estimates vary widely here, anywhere from about $5 billion to over $20 billion for 2024, depending on which firm you ask. One widely cited report puts it at around $12 billion, projected to roughly double within the decade. The exact number depends on who's counting, but every estimate points the same direction, up fast. A pound of whey protein concentrate that sold for around $2.50 back in 2024 is now going for about $13, over a 400% increase. Some suppliers have already sold out their 2026 allocation, and prices are expected to stay high through the end of the year. At Nasonville Dairy in Wisconsin, a family cheese operation that produces 185,000 pounds of cheese a day, 23% of total revenue now comes from whey, the same substance this family used to spread on their own fields for free. And the scale of production tells the same story. According to USDA data, American plants produced about 26 million pounds of whey protein concentrate in January 2003. By May 2025, that number had grown to roughly 40 million pounds in a single month. Here's the part of the story that almost never gets told. The U.S. government sets a minimum price for milk through a system called Federal Milk Marketing Orders, and the formula behind that minimum price factors in the market value of dried whey, which sounds harmless enough until you follow it through. When whey prices spike, every cheesemaker in the country, big or small, has to pay farmers more for their milk, because the formula assumes everyone is getting rich off the same whey boom. But that's only true if you have the capital for spray drying equipment and membrane filtration lines, the machinery that turns liquid whey into that valuable powder. Large processors invested millions in exactly that. Small cheesemakers, mostly, didn't. They're still selling raw liquid whey for somewhere between 5 and 15 cents a pound, while paying their farmers as if that whey were worth $10. According to the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, this leaves small cheesemakers losing about $3 for every 100 pounds of milk they process. And it's not a new problem. The association says it's been happening every year for over a decade. They didn't do anything wrong. They just got caught in a pricing formula built around someone else's factory. So what does all of this mean for the person actually buying the tub off the shelf? Raw whey protein, wholesale, now costs roughly $13 a pound, and whey isolate has climbed even higher, past $14, with some resale prices topping $15. By the time it's branded, flavored, and sitting in a supplement aisle, that same pound can sell for anywhere from $10 to $50 retail, depending on how premium the label wants to feel. Industry-wide, supplement margins can run anywhere from 40 to 70%. But protein powder specifically tends to sit on the lower end of that range, commonly somewhere around 40 to 55%. It's one of the less profitable categories on the supplement shelf, even with all that markup. And here's the part worth sitting with. A premium tub that costs 80% more than the cheap one often contains only about 10% more actual protein per gram. Most of that price gap isn't nutrition. It's positioning. There's no single villain in this story. Nobody set out to exploit anyone. A filtration technology solved a real environmental problem, and in doing so, created tens of billions of dollars in new value. That's not inherently bad, but that value didn't land evenly. It flowed toward whoever had the capital to capture it, the large processors, the supplement brands. It flowed away from the small cheesemakers caught inside a pricing formula that assumed everyone had the same machinery. And it flowed, in smaller but steady amounts, out of the wallets of anyone who ever paid a premium price for a tub of powder that was, chemically, almost identical to the cheaper one next to it. The next time you scoop out your protein shake, you're holding the endpoint of a 50-year journey from an environmental hazard to one of the most quietly profitable ingredients in the world. If you've ever paid extra for the premium tub without knowing why, you already know how this story goes. Subscribe for more stories about the industries quietly profiting off the things you never actually asked for.